Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's my great honor to be here today. My name is Talhatu Diallo, aka Tadia. I'm the Vice President of the United Nations Association HCC Central Campus. Sorry.
Be closer to the, speak to the back of the room.
Thank you. We are a student organization on campus. Our purpose aligns with UNA-USA Houston chapters, which is to promote the United Nations and to promote the Sustainable Development Goals. Last semester, we took on climate change by participating in events that promote sustainability. This semester, we are highlighting goal number 16 of the United Nations, which is peace and justice, stronger institutions. In that sense, in addition to this event, we are having two other events that are really close to my heart in April: human trafficking awareness and the fight against domestic violence. With a spirit of celebration and on behalf of UNA-HCC Central Chapter, I welcome all of you. I would like to thank each and every one of you for being here today with us. Today, we are celebrating women across the globe. And we are happy to do this here at HCC. And we couldn't do this without the goodwill of the administrators here at HCC. For that, I would like you to join me to welcome Dr. Mudassir Siddiqui, President of the HCC Central Campus.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you, good morning. I'm so excited and thrilled to have so many people at this campus for first ever event on Women's Day. So congratulations to all teamwork, for all the entire team at HCC, especially HCC Central, for their hard work and bringing this important event on at Sunnyside campus. Thank you very much. The International Women's Day is a global day celebrating the success of political success, financial success, career success for women. But this day also calls for action to accelerate equality, women equality. And that's the agenda for 2020 International Women's Day. I'm pleased to inform you that majority of our students are female. You know that? And also, a significant number of our students are, female students are in STEM program, which is science, technology, engineering, mathematics. And you know, STEM careers pay more than other careers. So you can see with STEM education, there is a prosperity, economic prosperity for women who want to pursue these careers. I would also like to acknowledge the participation of significant number of students from early college, South Early College. I see many. How many of you are from early college? And Heights. Heights school. And also the leaders from community. I would like to mention leader from community, especially my table on my left. I can see many. I don't know the names of each and every, so I don't want to start naming them. But thank you very much for your continuous support. I would like to especially thanks to esteemed panelists for your time, taking your time and sharing your perspectives and emphasize the need of women equality among students who are here and audiences, right? We all have to learn from you, from your experience, from your perspective. Also, I would like to thanks my trustee from District 9, Dr. Priyata Vanderbilt Stalwart, who has been very supportive of all we do at this campus. So, trustee, thank you very much for your direct support to our mission. With that, I would like to hand over to the next presenter. And thanks again for being here and support this event. Keep in mind, this is the first ever event in Houston Community College, I would say in the city of Houston. Correct me, Ms. Banks, all right? So this is the first event of its kind at Houston Community College in the city of Houston. But this is not the last event, I promise you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mudassir Siddiqui. Thank you for your leadership. We really appreciate. I would like to go on and continue thanking our special guest, Dr. Stacy Welcome, Dean HCC Central College. Thank you for your leadership and for supporting us. I would also like to welcome our announcer, Dan Stoker, President, United Nations Association, Houston Chapter. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being here with us, and thank you for your support. Thank you to our moderator, Honorable Tete Banks, Chair, United Nations Association, USA. Thank you for volunteering your time. Thank you to our speakers, Dr. Sophia Banu, Associate Professor, Meninger Department, Baylor College of Medicine. Thank you to Dr. Zahra N. Jamal, Associate Director, Rice University's Boniuk Institute for Religious Tolerance. Thank you to Ms. Eliza Paul, District Engineer for the Houston District. Thank you to Ms. Sarah Koransky, Educator Coordinator, United Nations Human Trafficking. And thank you to Filecha Lucas, Manager, Career and Job Placement Services, HCC Central and South. Thank you to our planning committee, our advisors, Ms. Rosa Guillen and Ms. Ogonaya Ine, Ms. Kim Berthe, without whom this event would not be possible. And thank you to our student life for providing lunch for us today. Thank you to HCC Communication, Facilities, and IT. Most importantly, welcome to our students, and thank you for being here. Finally, I would like to introduce someone without who this organization would not exist. She's our advisor at the UNA-HCC Central Chapter. She's a mentor, a leader, and a role model for us. Please join me and welcome to the stage Dr. Noelle Bezet. She's the Associate Dean, HCC Central College.
Thank you, Toddy. I'm humbled by your words. Briefly, I just want to have Dan Stoker come up. He's the president of the United Nations Association Houston chapter, and he just wants to say a few words.
Happy International Women's Day, right? Today is a global day, actually yesterday, but we're celebrating it in Houston today with this event and also another event if you have an opportunity at City Hall. It'll be an official commemorative event at the Legacy Room. There'll be a reception with the caterer, of course, a woman-owned business as well. And a number of speakers, both a delegation of women from the City Council, members of the mayor's staff, and a number of other organizations such as HCC, Links, YWCA, and other organizations as well that'll be sharing notes and celebrating International Women's Day. Of course, this is all about gender equity. The world is better, we know, statistically, in all sectors when women and girls have equity of opportunity. Things just seem to go better, including when they seem to be in charge. Things seem to go to better quite a bit too. So with that, I just wanted to share that. Thank you, Dr. Noelle, Dr. Siddiqui. And now I will have the pleasure of introducing.
Well, it's me.
Hmm?
It's me.
Oh, you're going to do that?
Coming back.
Oh.
No, I'm not going to introduce Tita, but I have
Okay.
some things.
That's why a woman is in charge today. Okay. All right. Thank you.
So I just have a few things to add about the state of education. Our panelists are from different sectors of professional fields. You can look at their bios and headshots. You can see that they're very well respected, and they've done a lot of incredible work in their fields. But I wanted to give you kind of an overview of what's happening with education. And I think I'm going to have to roll this. Where? Oh, I got a clicker, so we made it easy for me. Okay. So, poverty and gender. So you can't talk about education without talking about poverty. And just a quick snapshot here, 16.8% of the population for whom poverty status is determined in Harris County is females aged 25 to 34. What's the average age of our student here at HCC? 28. Do you know? It's 28 years old. A lot of our students are in poverty. This morning, Dean Welcome and Dr. Siddiqui, they opened up our Eagle Market, and we're serving food to our student population now. We're having wraparound services through Helping Hands. I'll let Dr. Welcome speak a little bit more to that later. So what do you think could be one of the #1 correlations to what we're seeing here with women not getting ahead in Houston? So the next group is the females 35 to 44, and who are they raising? So the grandmothers, mothers, and children are most likely to be in poverty. You can't talk about education without talking about this cycle. Degrees attained in Harris County by gender. Women, females are outdoing our male counterparts in associate and baccalaureate degree attainment, but are they finishing high school? Not at the same rate. Maybe they were dropping out and having those little young males. We don't know. We can dig down and see what those narratives are, what those stories are, but we do know we need to create pathways for them. We're going down to 8th grade now for endorsement. You high schoolers in here from Heiss and South Early and Sharpstown, you know you have to declare your majors, right? Or you have a specialization at your school. And sometimes we don't always know what we want to be when we grow up. I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. So these majors, and I'm going to let Felicia's going to talk more about this. If you can just see, though, the trend here. Women are choosing, moreover, what's the top there? Teachers, right? K-12. But are they becoming administrators? Oh, I don't know. I don't think so. Because if you look at the 7 largest school districts in our region, only one has a seated superintendent that's a female. She's an African-American female, Aldine. We have an interim in HISD, but the rest are males. We are not at parity in our public educational school system for leadership. A better, brighter story, though, even though we're looking at college leadership now, UH System and San Jacinto have female chancellors. That's very positive. And 2 of the largest community college districts in the region have more than 50% of their presidents are female. So that's a great story. And it's a greater story than what's happening nationally, because nationally, that is not the story at the higher levels of education. Montana State University President Wadid Cruzado, who actually used to work with my husband at New Mexico State, said in order for this demographic shift to take place, women must recognize their talents and advocate for themselves. Women by nature tend to second guess their talents and their experience. She said it is vitally important for women to examine themselves ruthlessly and then to forge ahead with courage and optimism. Okay? So some areas that maybe we need to look at for improvement if you're talking about calls to action, and some areas in which we've made or we are making significant progress. This is just a quick snapshot. I didn't want to take up too much of your time. I want to turn it over to Honorable Tita Banks, who's a National UNA Chair. Please see the bios there. We're not going to read them because we're in a time constraint, but welcome, Tita Banks. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bizette Flores, and I do want to acknowledge Dr. Flores in the back, if you could stand. We're so glad whenever we have you. It was under his leadership that both of their leadership, that the first collegiate chapter in the nation was established at University of Houston downtown, and since then we have 4 other collegiate chapters, and we certainly welcome now HCC's chapter into the UNA. The United Nations Association was established by Eleanor Roosevelt in 1946 in companion to the United Nations. We are now celebrating this year the 75th anniversary of the United Nations. And part of that is what we call the global consultations or global conversations. And that's why you are here today, in addition to the International Women's Day. Throughout the world, there will be global conversations, and this is where we want communities, cities, countries to come together to dialogue about what do they see as the current issues, and then what do they see as the road forward? What is it that you want to see in terms of what the city looks like, what the nation looks like, what the world looks like, and what does the United Nations look like, or what will it look like as we go forward? On the screen, I have this week, many of our leaders at the UN made very positive and significant statements. Ms. Naguya of the UN Women, she's executive director, she says, an equal world is an enabled world. Our Deputy Secretary General, Amina Mohammed, so we have women in leadership at the UN, said the world will not be able to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. We call them the SDGs, or the global goals, and that's what many of your issues are that you will be discussing at your tables, if half the planet is left behind. And then our Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, said, gender inequality and discrimination against women is the one overwhelming injustice across the globe, an abuse that is crying out for attention. So that is coming from our global leaders at the UN, and that sets the tone for what we will be discussing and what our concerns will be. The Sustainable Development Goals, there are 17 of them. You can look them up on the UN.org, but many of them are listed in our programs in terms of what it is, the issues that we will be discussing. I always like Global Goal 17, which is partnerships for the goals. That's what we are doing. We're bringing together organizations. We have probably over about 20 organizations here. The Raindrop Association is here, the Links are here, the AKAs are here, the universities are here, and other universities are included, as well as community organizations. And then as we look forward, you see some familiar faces for our next generation leaders who are already leading now. So many of you young people that are here, you don't have to wait to get out of college to be a leader. You can be a leader where you are. And we see this in terms of Malayla and also Greta. Greta's leading the students in terms of the climate change marches every Friday, and you saw the children's march throughout the world. That was Greta who started that, and she started that at the age of about 13. And so this is her second year into that. And of course, you know about Malayla and the fight for education for girls throughout the world. And she said the 21st century must be the century of women's equality. This is a call to transform the world by ensuring equal participation of all. So at this point, I'd like to, this is our future, and of course the UN Declaration of Human Rights, which was penned by, for the most part, by Eleanor Roosevelt, which includes all of these, and then the rights for everyone, including women's rights and to all of the rights that we're talking about in the Sustainable Development Goals. So to start our panel, we're going to first go through, get statements by our panelists, and then we'll have a short dialogue, and then we will turn to the tables for your conversations so that we can document what your thoughts are and what you want, what you hope to see in the future. What is it that you're going for? The information that we do today will be turned into the United Nations Association. This is the first of the cities to hold a global conversation. We will be doing this for the next through June. All of those documents will be compiled, and that will be the United States' statement to the United Nations of what we want to see in the U.S. So thank you so much for being a part of it. We're very excited, and we look forward to hearing what your comments will be. Before I turn it over to our first speaker, I do want our UNA Houston members to stand. You already met our president, Dan Stoker. Darlene is here, and all of our UNA Houston board members. And thank you so much. Great. Okay.
And please join the HCC chapter, or you're welcome to join the Houston chapter as well.
Okay. So our first speaker is going to be Dr. Sophia Banyu, who is associate professor at Baylor College of Medicine.
Thank you. So I will be talking about my, thank you. Thank you. No.
Right up to us.
Yeah. So I'll be talking about my journey with refugees and survivors of torture. Right after medical school, I was in Nepal, and that's the center that I work for. It's called the Center for Victims of Torture, primarily working with refugees and survivors of torture. Then I moved to New York, where I joined the Clinic for the Bellevue NYU program for survivors of torture, first as a volunteer, then as a fellow, then as faculty. Then when I moved to Houston, I started the Clinic for International Trauma Survivors, primarily to help refugees and underserved population here. And also I was training psychiatry residents, medical students, and child psychiatry fellows on how to work with refugees and survivors of torture. Then in 2017, I had the good fortune of meeting Dan, and under his leadership, we started the Alliance Wellness Center, where the Alliance is a resettlement agency where most of the refugees come for their services. So we thought it'd be better if we started the clinic at the agency itself, so it's easier for them to access care. And in 2019, with Baylor College of Medicine and the Baylor College of Medicine Medical Students PHR chapter, we started the Human Rights and Asylum Clinic. So one of the first cases that I saw when I first started working with refugees was this young nun. And at that time, when I joined the Center for Victims of Torture, I was also documenting torture cases for Amnesty International while treating, wounds that they had endured through the journey that they came through to the mountains from Tibet. So this young nun, had gone through a horrific torture, and while I was documenting her story, I was getting really angry, and I wasn't a psychiatrist at that time, so I couldn't really control my emotions, and like I am today, hopefully. This was many years ago. So I was really getting angry and upset at what had happened to her, because she had just taken part in a peaceful demonstration, but they had imprisoned her and tortured her in really horrific ways. So I said, "You must be really angry at what they've done to you." And she looked at me and she said, "No, I'm not angry at them. I actually feel sorry for them because they were born with such bad destiny, karma." You know the word karma, right? That they were born with such bad karma that she was going to pray for them that in their next lives they would be reborn as better human beings. So a story like that was one of the first stories that I have encountered, and since then I guess I've never looked back. And this is a story I always make sure I mention whenever I present on refugees. So just to give you a number very quickly, does anybody know how many refugees are there in the world right now? No, don't look up there. No cheating. Well, as of June 2019, the 70.8 million people are forcibly displaced worldwide, out of which 25.8 are refugees, 3.5 million are asylum seekers, and the rest are forcibly displaced within their country, internally displaced. And which country hosts the largest number of refugees? And Dan, you can't say that. Which country? United States? Anybody? Turkey, yes. Turkey hosts the largest number of refugees. The second country? India? No. Canada? No. Pakistan, yes. Pakistan. They host the largest number of refugees, yes. And everybody gets really surprised. Just before the Syrian crisis, Pakistan was the #1 country in the world that hosts the largest number of refugees. So it's interesting to know that. So how do refugees resettle, like in the US? Do you guys have any idea? Because there are a lot of misconceptions about refugees. So refugees, they do not apply for resettlement themselves, and they do not pick, like they can't go to United Nations and say, "Oh, I want to go to US, or I want to go to Australia." They have to go through a process, and the United Nations High Commission for Refugees, which was established in 1951, right after the Second World War, they made the definition of who a refugee is and what kind of social and legal protection a country will give the refugees. And also they made a distinction between who is an immigrant and who is a refugee. So in order for a refugee to be resettled, United Nations High Commission for Refugees says you have to belong to 4 vulnerable categories. First is you have to have been tortured or a victim of violence. Second is if you have severe medical illnesses. And the third is if you're a woman and child at risk, and the fourth is children at risk. So you have to belong to these 4 categories before you can be resettled. And if you've done anything in your country, or if you are considered a danger, if you hurt anybody, you will not be even considered for resettlement in any other country. As of now, less than 1% of the refugees are resettled. And as per UNHCR, they are saying that more than 8% need to be resettled, but the number is decreasing every year all over the world. And then the pathway to resettlement. This one is really, really important for everybody to know, and so you can go and talk to your friends about it. So after UNHCR identifies you as being a woman at risk, so they will do the biographical data, biometric data, iris scan, facial scan, fingerprints, and then the United States will say, okay, let me see if you are eligible to come to the United States. And if they say, okay, let's pick you, you will have to then undergo 8 US government agencies, 6 separate security databases, 5 background checks, and 3 in-person interviews before you're allowed to step foot on the United States soil. So this could take a minimum of 2 years and a maximum of 20 years. And just to give you an example, when I used to work in Nepal for the Center for Victims of Torture with Bhutanese refugees, it's been over 15, 20 years ago, and I still see Bhutanese refugees who are incoming in the past few years, and not more so in the last few years, but 5, 6 years ago I would see them. So some of them were born in the refugee camps and then they are resettled. Are you guys surprised at that? How long it takes and how much vetting it takes? We're talking about women and mental health. Depressive disorders account for 41.9% of the disability from the neuropsychiatric disorders as compared to 29.3% amongst women. An estimated 80% of the 70 million people that I talked about earlier about 80% are affected by violent conflicts, civil wars, disasters, and displacement, and they're mostly women and children. And at least 1 in 5 women suffer rape or attempted rape in their lifetime. And there's a lifetime prevalence of rate of violence against women ranges from 16 to 50%. Oh, sorry. Oh, okay. Sorry. So the Alliance Wellness Center I mentioned earlier that was started in 2017. I worked there only half a day a week in 2017. And in 2018 and 19, I tried to get some numbers. So 65% of the clients who received psychiatric care were women. And in 2019, with the Baylor College of Medicine Students Chapter for Physicians for Human Rights Students Chapter, we started the Human Rights and Asylum Clinic because we felt that there was a big need for what was happening at the border and people coming in to get asylum. So we have completed 14 cases and through this past month. And most of our clients are from El Salvador, Honduras, Guatemala, Ecuador, Ethiopia, and Chad. And this is a free clinic. We have had funding from Robert Wood Johnson Foundation to apply to provide mental health services that are free of charge to the asylum seekers. So they come to our clinic through Physicians for Human Rights and their lawyers. We do the evaluation, a forensic evaluation for them, and then we see them at Alliance in the Wellness Center for mental health services. So 90% of them are women. 48% were from the Human Rights Clinic and 52% from the community. Am I done? Okay. So just to go through the goals of treatment, we want to restore safety and enhance control and reduce the effects of anxiety and fear. We want to restore attachment and connections and also give them meaning and purpose to their lives, and most of all to restore dignity and value. So the relationship, no matter what kind of therapy you guys do, if you finally become psychologists or providers, no matter what kind of therapy you do, what kind of medication you give, always remember it's the relationship that you have with them is the most therapeutic healing tool. And I just wanted to quote Arundhati Roy. She says, what of our failure to replace the idea of flags and countries with a less lethal object of love? Human beings seem unable to live without war, but they're also unable to live without love. So the question is, what shall we love? Thank you.
Thank you so much for giving us the information in terms of refugees and from the medical point. Our next one is going to be from the career services point, and what are we doing in terms of jobs? As you see on your tables, you have certain issues, and so as you're listening to our speakers, sort of keep in mind some of those issues and some of the points that they're making so that you can add that into your discussion. And to bring us to date of that area is going to be Ms. Felicia Lucas of HCC.
Good afternoon. How are you? Good. Good information. Let's see. I'm going to move the mic over here too. Okay. Okay. This one. Up. Okay. All right. So I've been asked to speak to you about the state of women in career in business. And this is really an exhaustive topic, so there's so much that I can share, and I'll try to streamline it as best as I can today. Why is this topic important? Well, there's a study that's done annually by McKinsey & Company for the Lean In organization. How many of you have heard of Lean In? Not many? Okay, we'll learn some more. This study is done annually, and it's one of the most extensive studies of women in the workplace. And the study shows that C-suite roles have seen growth for women from 17 to 21% since 2015. But particularly with women of color, we are underrepresented at every level. So this is a concern. It's important to us. Even though we've seen the progress, we still have more progress to do. As far as business is concerned, according to the National Association of Women Business Owners, they do an annual report as well, 25% of women-owned businesses use their personal and business credit cards to expand their businesses. That's a big deal because there's money out there for businesses, and if women aren't getting it, we need to talk about why they're not. Venture capitalists is one of the ways that women can fund their businesses, and they tend to fund their businesses to their own tribes. And what we've seen in our statistics is that CEOs of venture capitalist companies are only 3% women. So if they're funding to their own tribe and you don't have many women in these venture capitalist roles, that means they're not getting the money, right? So despite these barriers, women play a critical role in our economy. Their earnings represent an increasingly significant portion of the household income. They make up half of the workforce in Texas, and they account for 52% of the management, professional, and related occupations. So we're looking at, again, the world of work and the world of business for women, right? So if we talk about the world of work, Dr. Noel already talked about education, so I'll just touch on that slightly. But we want to just look at three areas: educational attainment, occupation and industry, and earnings. If we're looking at education, in 1996, 27% of women had bachelor's degrees. But just 20 years later, in 2016, 41%. So that means women were being educated at a higher rate. At this same time period, women with less than a high school diploma was at 9%, but then 20 years later, it moved to 6%. So we see that more women are graduating from high school. This is
not in Harris County, unfortunately.
No, not in Harris County. So we're looking at national rates right now. Thank you for that correction. All right, so this is a graph that just kind of shows what we talked about a minute ago. At the very end over here, closer to my left, you'll see in 1996, high school is red, and bachelor's degrees are down at the very bottom in that dark blue. You can see the difference in the two. If you look 20 years further, you'll see that more women are receiving their bachelor's degrees and less women are just graduating from high school. If we're looking at occupation and industry for women, recruiting, we said earlier that women are 52% of the workers in management, professional, and related fields. But this is interesting for ethnicity. Asian and white women earn more, or they have higher paying jobs in management, professional, and related fields, 53 to 45% respectively. If you look at African American, that's only 30%. And then if you look at Hispanic, that's only 27%. So we still have some equity issues, right? In industry, we have substantial underrepresentation of what we call male fields. That's our mining, our construction, our manufacturing. Here's, in the next month, we'll be talking to a group of girls about roles in construction. There are fields out there that for you, and just because you may not see as many of you in those roles are waiting for you. This is just a chart again that lists the areas in which we are employed at a higher rate. At current, we're employed at a higher rate in education, health services, trade, transportation and utility, and local government. And one thing that you'll see is that there's a correlation between women being educated and what fields they're working in. In 1974, women were mostly employed in manufacturing fields. But in 2016, that area was switched, and we were the 7th highest for manufacturing fields, and education was the top. So you can see we talked earlier about how women are now being educated. The more educated they are, the different fields they moved into. Now let's talk about earnings. This is a big deal, right? You want to get paid the same. I like to move around, so sorry about that. When we talk about earnings, you want to be paid the same amount as your counterpart that's a male if you're doing the same job, right? That's an issue that we still have to deal with. If you look at gender, the median weekly earning for women is $789 to our male counterparts, which is $973. That's a big difference, right? If you're looking at education and how women are being paid on a median scale, and this is all from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, you'll see that high school diplomas, women with just that, earn about an average of $469 a week. If you go down to a bachelor's degree, it's over $1,000. When you look at fields, highest paid fields for women, you're looking at nursing, and then it goes down to pharmacy, lawyer, and then executives. Once again, these are charts that just mirror the information that we just saw. A chart over to my far right, women are blue and men are brown. So you can see at the very start, when they're 16 years old, they're starting to earn more than you already. So from 16 years old to the very end at 63, there is never a point on that graph where women overtake men. Can you see that? That's important. This graph, again, just talks about the different areas and what areas are paid higher. So we're looking at the world of work, and then we're looking at the world of business. So let's talk about business. According to the American Express State of the Women-Owned Business Report, this is an annual report that's produced every year to talk about women entrepreneurs. Between the years of 2014 and 2019, the number of women-owned businesses climbed by 21%, totaling a near of 13 million. Employment grew by 8%, totaling 9.4 million, and revenue rose by 21%, totaling 1.9 trillion. That's a lot of money, right? Women are producing money as business owners. If you look at the chart here, it shows you at the very top that women-owned firms, how their growth is as opposed to firms as a whole. And you can see on the chart that women are growing at an exponential rate. But this is also interesting. For women-owned businesses, if you look at ethnicity, firms that are owned by women of color grew at a double rate at 43%. We just talked about overall that women were growing by 21%, right? In that frame of time. But in that same frame of time, if it was a woman of color business, it grew by 43%. Asian American by 37%, Latino Hispanic by 40%, Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander by 41%, and African American at the highest at 50%. This means that these women are going out starting companies and they're seeing success. Oh, okay. Well, I'll move along quickly. The top 3 areas that most of these businesses are going into, the concentrations, are healthcare and social assistance, professional scientific and technical services, and other services. The healthcare industry, about 15% of those are women-owned firms, and the professional scientific and technical industries are 13%, and then the other area, which are nail salons, pet stores, those different types of industries, are 22%. All right, so if we're talking about solutions, we talked about what's happening in the world of work and in the world of business. Now let's look at our solutions. Earlier when I first started, I talked about a study that's done annually by McKinsey & Company for the LinkedIn organization. What we have to do to begin to make solutions is to believe the data, right? The data is there. It's showing us what's happening. Understand our biases, our unconscious biases, because we all have them. Have someone's back. We have to begin to develop partnerships in our world of work. Create networks, because there are jobs they call the hidden job market, meaning that there are jobs that are not even posted yet. You know about those through network, so you want to build your network. Companies need to mentor junior level employees and sponsor senior level employees. And then we have to get the buy-in of the CEOs. There's a leadership shadow, and as that leader begins to embrace that new vision, that trickles down to the rest of the company. We want to use that data to create policies, advance advocacy efforts, and establish programs and initiatives conducive to women thriving in the workplace. Similar for business, once again, the data doesn't lie, so we have to believe the data. We want to make sure that within the entrepreneurial ecosystem for women, because there is an ecosystem to help women undergird them as they're building businesses, that those people know the data so they can begin to make change. Policyholders, funders, supporting organizations, educators, researchers, all of these people need to know the data of what's happening for women in the world of small business. Once again, with that data, we'll create policies, advance advocacy, and establish programs. I'll go quickly through these last two. So the United Nations, obviously, we're partnering with them today, and the two areas that I chose to coincide with what we're talking about is gender equality, that is point number 5 of their 17 sustainable goals, and number 8, which is decent work and economic growth. So that's it. Did I do good on time?
Okay, thank you so much, Ms. Lucas. So those that are working on that issue in terms of jobs, employment, poverty, education, you got some really good data there. We're next going to have Sarah Karansky of United Against Human Trafficking.
Is it easier if I hold the mic?
Can she tell us?
Can I take it?
Connected to the feed.
Okay, well then I
in
will
the
just
other
stick close
room.
to it.
Yeah.
Okay, no worries.
Yeah.
Can everyone hear me? All right, perfect. Good morning, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us. And well, first of all, thank you all for inviting me out and coming out and listening to some really incredible speakers. I'm already so excited and engaged to start these conversations. So I'm very appreciative to be here and for 2 full rooms of people who are wanting to talk about some really hard issues. So my name is Sarah Karansky, and I serve as the education coordinator at United Against Human Trafficking. Just a really, I don't have that slide, just kidding. So I'll just a quick brief introduction to United Against Human Trafficking. We're a local nonprofit. We work in this greater Houston area. So as I'm sure you're all very familiar, this is a very large area. I'm not quite sure where it ends some days. So I want you to keep that in mind when I refer to Houston just a little bit. We're actually talking about 7 counties and where we serve. And we work, just as our name would suggest, to combat human trafficking. And we do this through a few different avenues, but really they're all targeting, all of our different programs that we offer are targeting better identification and response to human trafficking. Something that we've learned is that one of the greatest barriers to combating human trafficking is that victims are remaining unidentified. We don't know who they are. More often than not, victims do not realize that they are being victimized, right? They believe that this is their job. This is their relationship. This is their family. At the end of the day, this was their choice. And what we're working on is identifying those bigger pictures. What is really going on that makes this person believe that they are choosing to be exploited? That's the goal of identification. So just a few examples of some of our programs. We offer frontline professional training, so we train law enforcement, healthcare professionals, educators, right? These are all professions we know have an incredible amount of opportunity to identify and respond to human trafficking. But we also know that there are certain populations of people who are more vulnerable to being exploited. So kids, for example, we know are vulnerable, especially if we're not having these hard conversations with them. And so to address that, we offer youth programs. We work with middle school and high school age students, so I see quite a few of that age group in this room, which is incredible because one of the most impactful things that you all can do to fight human trafficking is to go talk about it, is to go talk to your friends, talk to your classmates, your loved ones, your family, not strangers, but go talk to people about human trafficking. And that's what we're really doing through our youth programs. How do we start to have these healthy conversations? And then we also do outreach. So our outreach team, I'm biased, but I think they're incredible, work with what are considered vulnerable populations, so more vulnerable to being exploited. So they work in places like homeless shelters, day labor sites, substance abuse treatment facilities, anywhere they need to be to not only identify human trafficking, but how do we start getting these individuals connected to services? Something that I'm always very excited to share with groups of people is that the anti-trafficking network in Houston is incredibly built out. I've never seen anything like it before. But what we've also learned is that this network of services and programs and resources for survivors of human trafficking, mean nothing if we can't connect the people who need them to them. And so that's the gap that our outreach team is working on closing. What is it that you need in this moment, and how can we help you find it? So that was a very quick introduction to United Against Human Trafficking. So I just wanted to introduce you to our organization. But in my next couple minutes, I just want to address what is human trafficking, or more importantly, what is it not? I think one of the other greatest barriers to combating it is that we have a lot of misconceptions about human trafficking, right? There's certain ideas that it is only happening overseas, right? It's not happening here. We always want to place an over there mentality on it, or that it may not happen where we live, in our schools, in our communities. A lot of people think that human trafficking is really only about sex trafficking, but we actually have study after study after study that show we believe there are more labor trafficking victims in the world. We are predominantly identifying women and girls as being victimized, right? We know that that is a very vulnerable population for many reasons, most of which are actually connected to the SDGs that we'll be talking about today. But we do know, that being said, we do know that boys and men are also being victimized. And so there's all of these misconceptions, and what we've learned is that if we are only looking for one piece of this puzzle, we'll never see the big thing, the full picture, right? So if we are only looking to identify sex trafficking, what chance do we ever have of identifying or of seeing labor trafficking? We need to be looking at this as a whole. So human trafficking, what is it? I think the simplest way to to define it is human trafficking is the control, the abuse, and the manipulation of another human being through force, fraud, or coercion for the purpose of either sexual exploitation or labor exploitation. So there's a lot going on there, but what we're really looking for is if a person is being controlled to exploit them. That's what human trafficking is. And we see it in so many different ways that it's a very nuanced and complicated issue. I also always like to point out that human trafficking is an industry. And that's one of the very unfortunate parts of this, is that it's a criminal industry, but it is an industry nonetheless. We estimate that human trafficking profits over $150 billion a year. And to put that into a little perspective, that is more than Google, Apple, and Microsoft combined. So this is a very profitable industry, but it's also the second largest criminal industry. Just a fun fact. Can anyone guess the first? Yeah, the drug trade. So human trafficking is the second largest, but it's also the fastest growing criminal industry. And so what that means is that we expect it to surpass the drug trade in profit very soon. And honestly, to put this pretty simply, one of the reasons for this is that you can only sell drugs once. They're sold, they're used, they're gone. How many times can you sell a human being? How many times can you sell a human being in one day? So fastest growing criminal industry. But I think one of the most important things that I can point out is at its core, human trafficking is a human rights violation. Has anyone noticed recently that human trafficking is a bit of a buzzword? We're hearing it quite a bit, but we're not really getting the full explanations. And there are certainly connections to all of these nexuses, right? We hear about human trafficking as it relates to public health, as it relates to criminal justice, as it relates to immigration and border security. And like I said, there are certainly connections, but at its core, human trafficking is a human rights violation. And this is a human rights violation that is happening every single day in every city, in every country around the world. There isn't really a bubble that exists that doesn't have this problem, no matter what people might be claiming. That's why it's so important that we should be talking about this. That's why I'm so grateful that you are all coming out to talk about some really hard issues, because it's happening here, it's happening in our city, it's happening in our schools, in our communities, in our favorite restaurants. It's that prevalent. So how do we get better educated, and how do we look at this as a comprehensive issue? And then just a little bit, because data is always important, very quickly I'll just show you these couple studies, keeping in mind that this is a very hidden crime. This is a very clandestine crime. Its nature, human trafficking's nature, means that it's not as simple as counting police reports. So these are estimates. I just want you to keep that in mind. But the International Labor Organization actually estimates that there are 24.9 million victims of human trafficking around the world. 55% of them are female, and 45% are male, and then 74% are adults, and 26% are children. So right off the bat, I think by just looking at these estimates, we're already addressing some misconceptions that we might hold or things that we tend to hear the most about. At the end of the day, the most responsible way that we can address human trafficking is by talking about it responsibly and comprehensively. If we're looking for certain pieces of it, we'll never see the bigger picture. But that is all I have for you, so yeah.
Okay, our next speaker is going to be Ms. Eliza Paul of the Texas Department of Transportation.
Which one is yours?
That's okay. I can talk about it. See if we can. Denise sent it yesterday. No, that's okay. I can just talk. Well, I guess they're missing some of my slides, so I'm just going to talk about what I do a little bit for Texas Department of Transportation. I want to thank HCC for inviting me to come and speak today, and just want to go over and talk about a little bit about myself. I grew up in Hong Kong, and my parents came from mainland China, and they immigrated to, they escaped from mainland China to Hong Kong. And I grew up there, studied my high school over there in Hong Kong, and then I finished high school, and I got a scholarship, a Chinese-English exchange scholarship to go to England and study 2 years, what they call the advanced level over there. It's a little bit different system than over here. So I was at a boarding school. I went to a boarding school and studied 2 years of boarding school over there in Malvern Girls College over there in England. And after that, I applied and I got into University of Imperial College of Science and over there and got my bachelor in civil engineering in England. So at that time, they were actually, the accounting firms actually were coming to the colleges to recruit students to be accountants, engineering school. They figure the engineering students are good at math, you know, they already know math, they know a little bit about engineering, so they can come to the school to kind of invite us to go and become accountants. So not knowing what exactly I wanted to do when I was growing up, I applied and interviewed, went through about three different interviews, and they offered me a job. So at that time, my parents was actually still in Hong Kong, but I have a brother and sister that's over here in Houston. So my parents said, you need to come over to Houston to be with everybody else. So I came on over here to Houston, and I applied it to University of Houston just because I didn't really want to come over. I wanted to stay in London and work over there. So, but anyway, the long story short, keep a long story short, I came over here and I started, and I got my master from University of Houston, got my civil engineering degree. And then after I started working for Texas Department of Transportation. I started out working in the district lab, which is kind of an area of the department that tests the material, the concrete, the soils, the asphalt, and we also do geotechnical engineering, which is the foundation designs of our bridges, the footings and foundations and all that. So I did that for a couple of years, and I decided that I need to go out to the field and learn a little bit about construction. So TechStar is typically, when I started, it was a very male-domineering company, just like any big company. You know, it's very male dominating, and being a construction industry that is more so. So I started working out in the field, and I started as a field engineer. So I was out there inspecting the job, watching the construction that was going on, learning everything about the work that goes on out there in the field. You know, watching how a bridge is being built, watching how we build a roadway, watching how we pay for the contractors, watching how we run the tests. And the reason why I wanted to go through all that, because every single piece of that work that I was out there, a woman can apply and do it. There's nothing out there that a woman cannot do that job. You can be out there inspecting the construction work that's going on. You can be out there doing the books on the construction project to be able to pay for what the contractor is doing the accounting part of it. You can be over there helping with safety. There's a lot of safety issues out of the field, and we have safety inspectors that's out there watching the job and doing all that. So I did that for a couple of years. I moved to another office. I became the assistant area engineer. Back then they call the one in charge of the area engineer. So I was out there being an assistant to the area engineer, and at that time I was building the Katy Freeway, I-10 Katy Freeway from Bellway all the way to 610. And then we were building 610 from Bel Air all the way up to the Galleria to I-10 also. So we were doing all that, and we were having a lot of fun. I was anyway. And then after that, I moved into the district office and became the director of construction, which is the person that oversees every single construction project that goes on in the Houston district. Houston district, that was what my slides have. It kind of gives you a little bit of statistics about Houston districts. We covered about all the 7 counties. They talk about 7 counties. We cover Harris County, we cover Brazoria County, Galveston, Montgomery County, Fort Bend, and Waller County. So we basically design, build, construct, and maintain all the entire freeway system of all these 7 counties. We don't do the city street, but we did all these other bridges and everything. And we coordinate with City of Houston, we coordinate with Metro, we coordinate with Harris County Flood Control, Harris County, and all the other agencies to do all the roadway work. We also run the ferry system in Galveston. You know, every weekend, if you want to go from Galveston to Bolivar, we have about over 100 employees down there running the ferry system 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Even on Christmas Day, holiday, everybody's taking off for Thanksgiving holiday. Our employees are out there working. And there's a lot of other things that we also do. We have a safety seatbelt program, and currently we actually have an End the Street campaign program that we wanted to end the fatalities in our roadway system. We want to cut our fatalities in half by the year 2035, and we want to get all the fatalities to 0 by the year 2050. We also have a program now, I was talking to Sarah, that we also have a program that we try and train our employees and train the general public to recognize human trafficking. We were putting out posters in all our rest areas. We built and maintain all those rest areas that you go to take a quick rest stop. And we have posters out there that we want to educate the public about human trafficking. Because our employee and us and the trafficking publics, they're the one that's on the road all the time. They're the one that can recognize and be able to see if a girl is in trouble, you know, out there, and help recognize that, and then get attention, call the police or whoever, call Sarah's agency to try and help them. So what I really want to wrap up is, in my free time, I also volunteer for the STEM program. My husband and I, we're both engineers, so we volunteer for the STEM program. We go to different high schools, and we try and advocate the science part of the education, because the science part, as somebody tells you, that will get paid a little bit more, if you go into the science field. So, and I can guarantee you, we were talking just now, I study differential equations when I was in college. But I can guarantee you I haven't used it since I started working. So don't be scared of the math and the science and all that. You just have to learn it, and there's a lot of opportunities out there. And we are hiring.
Zara's up. Okay. Our final panelist is Dr. Zara Jamal from Rice University. And then what we will do afterward, we will give directions in terms of how to do the facilitating. Okay? Great. Thanks.
50 years ago, we landed on the moon. In the last decade, we photographed a black hole for the first time. The world has made unprecedented advances, but no country has achieved gender equality. Half of humankind still lacks equal treatment, status, and opportunity. Women are 33% more likely to experience physical and sexual violence, and they earn 23% less than men globally. Houston, as the most diverse city in the country, has the opportunity and the responsibility, I would argue, to lead the United States in meeting the Sustainable Development Goals regarding the gendered aspects and experiences of poverty, food insecurity, education, child marriage, and intimate partner violence. Globally, women aged 25 to 34 are 25% more likely than men and boys to live in extreme poverty. In Harris County in 2017, women's poverty rate was 50% greater than the male poverty rate. Again, in Harris County, 36% of single-parent households were led by women versus 17% of men who were living at or below the poverty line. The issue is worse for women of color. For Asian women, they experience poverty at a rate of 110% greater than white women. Hispanic and Black women are more than 200% more likely than white women to live in poverty, and Native American women are about 300% more likely than white women. Women in poverty and the children who rely on them have a harder time accessing healthy food. Globally, women have a 10% higher risk of experiencing food insecurity than men in 2018. In Harris County, as of 2017, nearly 1 in 5 adults and nearly 25% of children, 1 in 4, were food insecure. This means that they also had increasing health problems and also faced disparities in accessing care for their health issues. And it's not because folks here are homeless or lazy or unemployed. In fact, 97% of folks in Houston who are food insecure have housing. 66% of them are working. The issue is that they have to choose between paying for food versus medical care or electricity or rent or transportation to get to school or to work. Thankfully, we have programs to address these issues at the national, state, and county levels, like the Supplemental Nutrition Access Program, the Special Supplemental Nutrition Program for Women, Infants, and Children, the Houston Health Department, and nonprofits like the Houston Food Bank and their partnership with Brighter Bites. And this is an opportunity, I think, for all of us to plug in and enhance the capacity and coordination of all of these efforts. Global data shows us that education paves the way out of poverty for women and children. But even if women are educated and working, their children may not be accessing education. In the United States, between the ages of 0 to 17 years old, most children do not have access to public school or to childcare during work hours, at a rate of 63%. In Harris County, that number is a little better. We're at 60% because pre-K is now available for some 4-year-olds. But more education does not close the gender wage gap for working moms in the U.S. In fact, a woman who becomes a mother reduces earnings from 77 cents on the dollar to 71 cents on the dollar for every dollar that a father is paid. In Harris County, the stats are worse than national averages for white women and for women of color. White women in Houston make 69 cents on the dollar made by white men. Asian women make 56 cents, Black women 47 cents, and Hispanic women 34 cents. So if education doesn't get women and girls out of poverty, what does? For some, the answer is child marriage. This provides an opportunity for some families to offload their obligation or to gain financially from human trafficking, to safeguard the family's honor or increase their access to resources. Now, thankfully, child marriage globally has reduced in the last several years from about 30% to about 20%. But did you know that Texas has the second highest rate of child marriage in this country? And most of this involves children between the ages of 12 and 17. In 2017, Texas legally banned marriage under the age of 18. But emancipated minors aged 16 to 17 can still marry. This is an important step, but more needs to be done. Why? Because statistically we know that child brides are 50% more likely to drop out of high school, 4 times less likely to finish college. They are suffering spousal abuse 3 times more than the national average in this country, and unsurprisingly, therefore, have much higher rates of psychiatric disorders. The final SDG impacting women globally and locally that I'd like to discuss is intimate partner violence. Globally, up to 24% of women and girls aged 15 to 49 have experienced physical and/or sexual violence by an intimate partner in the last year. In Texas, 35% of women and 75% of youth age 16 to 24 experience intimate partner violence in their lifetimes. Here in Texas, only 10 to 25% of victims seek help. And again, in our state, 30% are turned away from domestic violence shelters. It's not because the shelters don't want them, it's because there isn't enough space. 82% of those killed by intimate partners were aged 16 to 85 in Texas in 2018. That rate has increased over the past decade. And that is why Harris County has invested about $2.5 million into a mobile crisis intervention team, because Harris County has consistently been the leader in the highest rate of domestic violence homicides in this state. Multiple agencies and nonprofits like the Houston Area Women's Center, Houston DV Lawyers, DAIA, Agents Against Domestic Abuse, and others address these issues, but again, more must be done. In closing, I'd say that we need a multidimensional and multi-sectoral approach to our call for gender parity globally and locally. The diverse demographic profile of Houston is the profile of the United States in 2040. How we address these issues here today has implications for the country, and I hope we can resolve to be role models for the country in meeting the Sustainable Development Goals impacting our city. Let us commit today to working with vulnerable women and children, both here and abroad, to enhance their quality of life, their hope, their dignity, and their self-reliance. Thank you.
I know that some of the high school students came in a few minutes late, and so we're running a little behind on time. I hope you all can kind of hold on with us for about another 15 or 20 minutes. We're going to ask just one question of the speaker panelists, and then we will have table discussions. If you must leave, go ahead and quietly do so, but we will be conducting table discussions for about 10 minutes. We'll do 5 minutes of a single question to the panel, and then we will conduct some table discussions. You have a table facilitator at each table. If you're a table facilitator, can you raise your hand? Okay, and then we'll be recording some of those notes to take back to the United Nations Association. And I'll let Tita Banks. And Dean, welcome. Would you like to come say a few words now? Because I think people are probably going to have to go out a little bit at a time. So I'm going to invite Dean Welcome to come up and say a few words to close out this part of this session.
Thank you. Thank you so much as our students prepare to exit. Thank you, students, so much for participating. Fantastic job. On behalf of HCC Central, we would like to say thank you, specifically thank you for bringing this topic to HCC, to our South Campus. The International Women's Day is a huge event, one that all of our team got involved in. And this is not easy putting on such an event, right, as you all are aware. And so from our administration, from Dr. Siddiqui to our campus management, to our board services, our board members who are here, thank you so much for coming out to support our team that are here, our management team, from advising to counseling to administration to Dr. Bazette Flores for a fantastic job of bringing our students. The most important thing is bringing these students in and being exposed to things that we see, we know that's going on. Like I have a lot of law enforcement friends and family members, and they tell me often, if you only know what goes on when you go to bed, that's when life happens. I can't even imagine that. I can't imagine being in that. And so to have our students to really understand it's more than just their world. There's so much that's going on. So I would like to say thank you for our overflow room, for the networks that are here that are covering it. Thank you all so much, and let's continue with our questioning and our tabletop conversations. And if there's anything that HCC Central can do for you all that are out and that would like to partner with us, we are always looking for opportunities to expose our students to much more. So again, thank you so much for today.
We'd like to invite those who are in the overflow room to come on into the main room as we begin having our global conversations. Those who are seated in the back, if you can join some of the tables, because we do want full discussions as we do this. While we're doing that, I'm going to pose one question, and Dr. Jamal, you started it at exactly where I wanted to. So the question that's going to each of our panelists is, what major action do you think would be effective in terms of making specifically Houston a better metro area or a better city, and that can be replicated throughout the nation? And you mentioned multi-sectional cooperation, so if you could pick up on that, that would be great.
Is this on? Do I need to do something to turn this on? Not this. I don't know. That's a great question. I think that this is an opportunity for nonprofits, for government, for corporations, et cetera, to come together on these different issues, because these are human issues. If one member of humanity suffers, then we all suffer. And those who are indifferent to the suffering of others, I think, are unworthy of being called human. So if there is an opportunity for us to come together to cut out the bureaucracy, to really enhance our capacities and coordination, stop the competition amongst ourselves for a moment, perhaps also to leverage corporate social responsibility for social justice issues, where the money and power can really make a difference, I think these are opportunities for us to have those conversations and try to move the needle on some of these goals.
Great. So as we're preparing for our facilitating sessions, the terms multi-sectional or intersectional dynamics, or we call them collaborations, partnerships, things like that. Ms. Paul?
Yes. And I think what I'm going to concentrate and talk about is education. And when I say education, is education in all arenas, not just in the STEM education, which I definitely promote for all the women that is in the area, but any kind of education that the groups the women can learn to do. Because I think with a better education, as you can see from some of the slides, like only 26% of the women have college education and things like that. So I think if we can try and educate more of our women and multicultural in a different area, I think that's one arena we can try and improve our quality of life and what we can do, our ability to be able to find a better job and also to deal with all the different multicultural issues that we have. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Ms. Karansky?
Yeah, I think I would reiterate, I mean, both of the points that are being made, not just education, but that collaboration piece. I mean, at the end of the day, who knows our communities better than we do? And so I think one of the, especially in the field that I'm in, I think one of the greatest misconceptions that we might have is that only law enforcement can do something, or only healthcare professionals, or only certain groups of people can take action. And that is so far from the truth. Because at the end of the day, who knows our communities and our neighborhoods and our schools better than we do? It's not outside forces coming in, it's us. And so by that willingness to not just get better educated about these hard issues, but have those hard conversations, and the willingness to take action within our own communities has an incredible amount of impact. And that does all start with collaboration. We need to be working together within our communities, working together within our city at these different levels. And I think that's going to, having those types of conversations and taking actions like that, I think will have some of the greatest impact that we might be able to see. But it also means that we have action items ourselves. It means that we need to be able to take these hard conversations outside of this room. And it means that maybe we might have to be the champions in our communities for these causes. And that's a big ask, and I'm aware of that. It's not an easy thing to ask, but I think that the opportunity for impact that it does have is immeasurable.
Thank you. And Ms. Lucas?
I would speak from the framework of the world of work. From the world of work, the things that we can do is make sure that companies and ourselves, that we are paying attention to the data, that we understand what happens between you and a coworker sitting next to you. There has to be gender equality. And while we have many programs, we don't have enough that's happening in that area. So I would say understanding the data, using the data, having discussions like this, but it needs to be in your workplaces. And then doing something about it, putting together programs or initiatives. You can do it yourself in your workplace, especially if you're in a place of, or if you're in a role of leadership. If you're in a role of leadership and you're a woman, you should have mentors. You should have sponsors. And because you got there, someone needs to show someone else how to get there. So I think individually we can do things by making sure that we're aware, but then we can bring things to our company's attention as well in the world of work in Houston and make sure that we're having these discussions.
Thank you. Can we give our panelists a round of applause before we move to the next?
While Dr. Banks is giving out instructions for the discussions, which we'll just have like about 5 minutes of discussion, can I invite Dr. Siddiqui? Is he still here? Oh, okay. All right, you're going to grab him to come up and have a picture with the panelists and our trustees. Also, please. Okay, thank you. And our UNA chapter president. We'll have a picture over here while Honorable Tita Banks gives us our table discussions, questions.
Yes. All right. Each of you has a facilitator at the table, so can the facilitators raise your hands again?
Is there a table without one? Okay, we'll get one.
Okay. And then we do need someone at the table, whether it... We do need someone at the table to take notes so that we can collect those notes. It can be the facilitator, it could be someone else. 3 questions, that's all that we're looking for, and this is what everybody throughout the world is doing at their conversations. The question number 1. Just a second. Go ahead. Okay, if we can keep the talking down while we go through the directions. Okay. If the current trends continue, what do you think will look like? And this is the current trends regarding your particular issue. So each table has an issue. So if those current trends continue, what is Houston going to look like? The second, and that's a quick one. The second one is, if the current trends continue, how will that impact the issues? So those two are very close, so you may want to combine those. But the most important one is, what actions should we take now to make a better Houston? What actions should we take now